officer report today, just so you know. I'm happy to hear that. Good morning. Man, this is just like Iowa. They thought nobody come for the caucus and everybody showed up. Thanks for all showing up today. It's pretty cold. Bernie Dardis had a little trouble making it in from West Fargo. His pickup almost didn't start, so. And Mary says it's a new year. Oh, roll call, please, first. I'm sorry, Lisa.
Eltoff.
Here.
Bigwood. Bonsack.
Here.
Carlsrud.
Here.
Erdman.
Here.
Johnson. Here. Mahoney.
Here.
Nielsen. O'Brien.
Here.
Schmaltz.
Here.
Schmidt. We have Mark. Ian.
Here.
Dardis. Lambret. Moe or Siegert. We have a quorum.
We got a quorum? Very good. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 11th and October 26th?
Also move.
Is there a second?
So moved.
Second. Any corrections to the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but it's a new year, so Ken Vians wants to break traditions and actually have an officer report. Ken, you're on.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Probably wanted to bring people up to speed because since our last LAWA meeting, there's been a considerable amount of work being done behind the scenes by both LAWA and some of the work through our partners, obviously, with Garrison Diversion. Back in October, mid-October, we did have a Red River Valley Water Supply partnering session between LAWA and Garrison that we all contributed with, some of the LAWA leadership, the Garrison leadership and administration. And we had kind of a day-long session in Valley City with the mayor for helping make all that happen. And it really was an opportunity to work at how the two organizations partner together for the fulfillment of the project as we move forward, not just built on contracts, but built on relationships. We looked at the definition of success, the cost of failure, the needs and expectations of each organization, our communication, decision-making protocol, dispute resolution, risk assessment, and the need to have expansion on that and some of the metrics for success. So as a result of that, we did create kind of a new committee that was going to look at policy and risk management. And we've had several meetings on that already. Some of the major discussion items, again, come back have been the programmatic costs, hydraulic and pipe size, legislative priorities, risk, and start looking at some of the user meetings that we need to have. Those are going to continue. We originally were set up for every other week, but I think the next one is probably monthly. But those are critical, high-level leadership issues that we needed to keep moving forward. And I think this is a great way to have, again, all of us working together on that with the two organizations. Then in the end of last year, in December, we had a LAWA TAC meeting update. It was probably, somebody said, the longest technical advisory committee meeting, but maybe to date, where we were talked about construction overviews and the construction outlook for the future, demand allocations, again, pipe size, hydraulic review, then recommended approval of the NDOS task orders, which will come to this committee today, the Red River Valley Water Supply task orders. program cost update and program schedule. So a lot of the things a number of the things that are here on our agenda today have been, and we will note, have been gone through the Technical Advisory Committee. And obviously, there's a report on that which will go much further. Another area that we had quite a few meetings on was on the cost allocation model as a part of the project participation agreement. More on that will be coming through here as we have a discussion today. That all ended up at the Finance Advisory Committee, which we had here at the beginning of January, chaired by Maureen. And then the last item I was just going to bring up is I've been working more closely than probably before with Paul Boersma and Kip on things such as the risk assessment, the staffing, dashboard, and some of the things for success that we needed to. I won't get into all the details of that, but I think a significant issue that we're following through is having a better understanding of all the risks that this project has and what we're doing to address risks and not allowing for some of these unanticipated things to come up. And so I have a copy of that risk assessment if anybody was interested in it, but I know we are going to start spending more time doing that as a primary goal as we move forward. So anyway, that's my report, Mayor.
Glad we had to wait a year to get it then, Ken. It's really quite a bit you told us about. Thank you. Kip Kovar, we're going to have a update, technical committee, or somebody else going to give that?
Yeah, Al Grasser could not be here. Bruce Grubb could not be here, so they asked if I would provide a short technical advisory update. I don't have the minutes from the meeting, but we did meet December 12th in Grand Forks, the Technical Advisory Committee. It was the longest meeting, so I do think we now hold the record for sure. Just a couple highlights, because Ken already did such a good job explaining what we did at the meeting, but we're bringing the Technical Advisory Committee approved 6 task orders. They're coming to you today. Coming to you today with a recommendation of approval. We also went over the program cost update. Paul Boersma from Black and Veatch will be doing that today. And maybe the last item I'll highlight is they covered the hydraulic analysis. Since the route has changed from the Washburn route to the McCluskey Canal route, there is going to be a little bit of a change in the brake tank location. So we heard about that. And maybe one last item, the Technical Advisory Committee is requesting maybe some more information when it comes to construction, whether that's summary reports from our field inspectors, but we're going to start kind of working on that for the Technical Advisory Committee. With that, take any questions.
Any questions? Very good. NWAS task orders. Kip and Paul are going to talk to us about that today.
I think on your agenda, it is the program cost update.
Okay.
Do you want a presentation? Yeah. And I believe you can just do arrows or.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll spend just about 5 minutes this morning doing a update on the programmatic cost update. We did a pretty deep dive into this in our TAC meeting as part of that 5-hour TAC meeting. And just a second here. Hey, Kip, I may need your help. I'm sorry. I'm getting
Interference.
That might be above my abilities.
or maybe it's Kim here.
Kim, do you know what we have to do? Or if it's, is there a minimize? Yeah, or if you clicked over here.
There we go. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Oh. Maybe I'll stay in this mode here. So we spent quite a bit of time on a programmatic cost update, which is good because it's important for this group to have clarity on the overall programmatic cost. And I will summarize this in about 5 minutes here. So here's some key takeaway messages for the group here. We did the original programmatic cost update in 2022. We have updated it in the month of December, so now we are presenting a current programmatic cost estimate. There is an increase in that cost estimate, but that's an inflationary increase, and that the important point is that that increase was anticipated in the financial modeling that was done in 2022 and 2023. So when Mary and Sean put the financial models together, they did a pretty good job of anticipating some fairly aggressive inflation, which we indeed did have, and we had those, so that those inflationary impacts were incorporated into the financial models. And after reviewing the financial models in the programmatic cost estimate, the TAC recommended no other programmatic cost estimates updates at this time. It is good, I think, for this group just to have a clear idea of what the cost estimates are. We are really going to be talking about the first item on this list, the programmatic cost estimates. They were done in March of 22. When we say programmatic cost estimate, we are talking about the entire cost of the NDOS project. So not the original state Red River Valley water supply project, but the NDOS project where the intake is on the McCluskey Canal and then the discharge is on the Cheyenne River. And this is a cost that includes administration, engineering, construction, basically all-in cost estimate. That is what we are talking about this morning. And in 2022, here's what we basically knew. We had done a combination of conceptual and preliminary engineering on the pipeline and the facilities. By facilities, I mean things like the pump station, the water treatment plant, the break tanks, the discharge, anything that's not a pipeline. And so we basically had conceptual to preliminary engineering for those parts of the program, and we had appropriate conceptual preliminary engineering cost estimates for all the facilities. For the pipeline, we had actually bid about pipelines 6A and 6B, so we had bid approximately 10 miles of our approximately 125-mile pipeline that we will eventually bid. And so the programmatic cost estimate included the as-bid cost, and we extrapolated the as-bid cost for the pipeline to the entire pipeline, and we added a 5% programmatic contingency onto that estimate. So here are the numbers that hopefully ring a bell for this group. If you look at the bottom in green, $1.083 billion is what Sean and Mary had used in the financial models back in March of 2022. And you can see kind of in the middle, line 5, transmission pipelines, $752 million. You know, three quarters of our cost estimate is basically to put pipe in the ground. So that's a big portion of the cost estimate. As I said up front, in the last 2 years, we've had significant inflation in 2022, 2023. The financial model predicted 13.5% inflation over those 2 years, and that's really what we think we observed when we look at a lot of bidding results, cost construction indices. And so the number that you may have remembered as $1.083 billion is now a $1.23 billion estimate. But again, I want to emphasize that's not a change from what was predicted. So when the financial models anticipated who was going to pay what for the project and what their 40-year payments would be for the entire loan of the project, this number was assumed. And so Fortunately, we are staying on track with the predicted number. And by the way, so when people are asking, what is the cost of this NDOS project right now, or for Red River Valley? A $1.2 billion estimate is fairly close to what we are dealing with. So the TAC did an evaluation of, we've had 2 bid openings since we came up with our programmatic cost estimate. We opened segments, the bids for segments 5D and 5C, another approximately 20 miles of pipeline. So we have that many more data points. TAC looked at various ways of looking at those bids and extrapolating the bids that we had received more recently for the entire 125 miles of the pipeline. And, I think the conclusion that TAC came to is we are comfortable staying with the same programmatic cost estimate based on the bid results that we have had received to date in 5C and 5D. TAC did recommend that we continue to kind of maintain our inflation-adjusted programmatic cost estimate. They've asked us to do some additional market research on evaluating kind of what we see as the current market conditions. And they've asked us to do more of a segment-by-segment cost estimate. So the pipeline construction is broken up into 7 different segments. And they've asked us to do a more deeper dive in terms of coming up with a unique cost for each of the 7 segments, which we are in the process of doing. So it's good before we start a meeting like this to have just a firm understanding of cost and uncertainties and where we're at in the cost, and I hope this provides a good update for everybody on programmatic cost. That's all I had for this morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So one of the questions was the legislative body set a limit of how much money they would put in. Does that cover the cost?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? I'm hearing the audio.
State has an intent how much money they'll put to the Red River Valley project. I think it's 934 million. Does that cover the cost of the state for the project?
So the entire project cost has not changed. Are you asking about the cost share for the local communities for the city?
No. Mary?
I'll go back.
When
there.
legislative intent, they had an intent how many millions they'd put into this?
953,
953. So
And that
that's
was-
not changed.
that hasn't changed. That's what they
Th-
said in
That's what I'm
that.
asking, Paul. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Any questions, Paul? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And was task orders, that's both of you as well, or just you, Kip, or, okay?
Yeah, when you sit in those chairs up there, the audio sometimes is kind of hard to pick up on words, and so just apologize sometimes if we can't hear the question properly.
We're gonna look into that, because some people complain about that. That's kind of a dead corner over there. Now Mike gets to have it happen to him, so now he'll have to get it fixed, so.
Okay. Okay, so we're going to cover 6 task orders that the TAC brought forward. The first 3 deal with NDOS. The other 3 deal with kind of different aspects of the project. You'll just have to let me know if you want to act on one versus more than one. The first 3 deal with NDOS. Is a reminder on the map. The orange line up there is the NDOS section, so the 32 miles of the federal part of the project. These first 3 deal with facilities, all right near the canal. And so we're going to take a look at the canal intake pump station, the bio-to-water treatment plant, the main pump station, and the brake tanks. So the first task order is dealing with the McCluskey Canal intake pump station. I believe in your board books, it's tab D. We put a sketch together what it might look like along the canal. So in the center of the canal is where the screens would sit, and there would be piping over to adjacent near the road, O&M road, and your pump station with wet well would sit off to the side and then pipe over from there. The task order just deals with preliminary design. It's not final design, it's preliminary design. The task breakout is on the screen, and a good chunk of this is going to deal with selecting the correct site and dealing with the landowners. So the preliminary design is for $751,031. Any questions with this first one?
Thoughts, questions, suggestions, corrections of Kip? Anything? No? I do have a motion. Move. Dave, move to approve, second by Ken. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Bonsack,
Yes.
Karlsruhe.
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
Yes?
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt,
Yes.
Meehan.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Tab E.
Yeah, so the next task order is for the bio-to-water treatment plant and main pump station. So that first pump station's a low head pump station. It just lifts the water out of the canal and pushes it over to the bio-to-water treatment plant, where the water flows through the bio-to-water treatment plant, and then it would go through the high head pump station, the main pump station. There's a sketch on your screen that might look something similar to that. Most likely, all this will be really close to the canal. It might be within the first quarter mile. All this might be just lined up right in that area, but that is something we need to still figure out is site selection. This again is for preliminary design. You can see the list out of all the items that will be covered under this one. Something to note is that we will have to talk to the health department about the NDPDES permit. That allows us to discharge. So that's something significant that we'll tackle. In this task order, the cost is $2,872,752. And I would take any questions with this one.
Any questions?
What happens if the health department doesn't okay that?
Jim asked the question,
Well,
what happens if the health department doesn't okay it? Are we done?
I was trying to
with the
formulate an
project?
answer for that. Well, they'd have to, have reason for that, and I don't see any good reason why they wouldn't approve a discharge permit. Since they already approved the first one, this would be modifying it to use the canal water, which is the same water. But I'll have to think about that some more, why they wouldn't.
Tough question there, Jim. Do I have a motion? I'll make a motion. Have a second.
Second.
Good, now this side of the room's getting more aggressive. You guys are gonna have to keep up with it. Oh, okay, so they're at the 2 million mark, okay. Roll call, please.
All right. Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood. Bonsack,
Yes.
Karlsruhe,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
All right,
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Meehan.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
thank you. Task order F.
The third task order under the NDOS section is for the hydraulic brake tanks. This is approximately 2 5 million gallon storage tanks and piping. Again, with this task order, we'll be dealing with the siting of the location and the landowners. These will have to be purchased properties. The estimated capital cost for this is $23 million. The task order total is for $370,443. Again, that's a very quick summary, but I'd be willing to take any questions with that.
The intent, if the feds come in eventually, will they cover that cost, or are they going to be more covering costs of completion of pipeline?
So yeah, the team, whenever, I think this is what you asked, when the team looked at what is covered under NDOS, we've always considered the hydraulic brake tank to fall under the NDOS portion, meaning that that could be
Funded.
funded through the federal dollars. Yep.
Steve, you have a comment? Oh, you're just ready, okay. Any other discussion on that? Do I have a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mark and Jim? Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Bonsack,
Yes.
Carlsrud,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz,
Yes.
Schmidt,
Yes.
Vian.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Very good. Continue. Tab A, the operation planning, phase 3.
Yep. So under tab G, operational planning phase 3, I thought since Steve Brain was in the room, he can cover this task order.
So as you work on the preliminary designs and the designs and construction project, the other thing to remember is that this will also be a very large project. Go ahead, push, Mayor.
They're concerned the mic isn't on there, Steve. Could you hit the button? It has to be green.
This one looks like a video game.
I think Brian controls it, so.
You can come over here.
Kips works.
Now I'm in the dead corner though.
Just Mike's in the deck corner.
So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as I was saying, as you work through the preliminary design, final design, and construction of the project, the other thing to remember is that this will also be a very significant project to operate. And so back in back under the federal project, you did do a draft operational plan as it related to the federal project. And then in 2019, you initiated the process for doing operational planning for the state project. And so phase 1 was done in 2019. Phase 2 was done in the 2023 biennium, 2021 biennium. And now we're approaching you with the phase 3 task order. Kip asked me just to include this slide quickly. As we look at operations for the project, basically it's going to be a lot of time where we're not operating under drought. But you can see there's still a lot for us to do. And so during the non-drought conditions, the project will be constantly monitoring to make sure that we're not approaching a drought. But in the meantime, we also have to make sure that we work on the source water freshening. That has to do with the salinity in the canal, pretty similar to the salinity in Devil's Lake issue. We have to be providing water to the direct pipeline users because they'll be wanting their water all the time, not just during a drought. There's a certain amount of water we have to provide through the pipe at all times to make sure it doesn't go anaerobic. If we don't have enough direct pipeline service, then we'll have to run some water just to accomplish that. There'll be routine maintenance of the entire system. Kip's going to continue, or the team will track the water as it's going through the pipeline, through the reservoir, and through the river. As I mentioned, we'll have a dashboard where we can monitor the drought, and then we'll have to stay in compliance with the NPDES permit. And then without getting into a lot of detail, as it gets drier, the thought is we're going to follow the 5-phase approach that the National Weather Service and the Corps of Engineers uses. So then we'd move into a phase 2 drought. And this is where we sense that it's getting drier, but it's still not dry enough to have to backfill the reservoir, Lake Ashtabula. When it gets to the point then where we see the reservoir starting to drop, that's what we'll call phase 3. Under that condition, we'll be doing all the other stuff that we were doing previously, but we'll also start to fill the reservoir, so we'll be operating the project at a much higher capacity. One of the key aspects of phase 2, when we're monitoring things, we'll be doing predictive modeling to look at what's happened in the past and try to help give the garrison and LAWA a sense for what the possibilities are as we move forward with another drought. Under phase 4, now it's gotten dry enough that the project needs to release water from Lake Ashtabula, so we're not just filling and creating a full reservoir as an insurance policy for you, we're actually releasing. And then heaven forbid, if we ever get to phase 5, that's a situation where the drought has exceeded the capacity, the drought of the 1930s, and we're actually in an emergency situation where the drought has exceeded the design standards of the project. And so that would be pretty major rationing approach at that time. So as I indicated in my introduction, we're moving into then the phase 3 task order. In phase 2, we really rolled up our sleeves in terms of doing some statistical analysis on the past weather patterns and the reservoirs, and we're in a really good place in terms of moving forward with predictive modeling. We've worked quite a bit on governance. We've worked quite a bit on evaluating the water supplies. We spend a lot of time modeling the operations of the reservoir, and then we have a draft water accounting system. As we move into 2023, we're probably not going to move along as far along as we had initially planned, because we do have our operational planning all planned out through 2032, but we're waiting for the North Dakota Department of Water Resources on some interpretations of how they're going to deal with water governance, and that's critical to operations. We're also waiting on the update of the water control manual for Lake Ashtabula that we'll be working side by side with the Corps of Engineers on. And then on the water accounting, we don't feel that we need to advance that as far in this next biennium, given that we don't plan to start the project up for 2032. So we'll be working on some more programmatic type aspects of things. And when you take the time for Black and Veatch, ourselves, and then Wilson Water Group, who does the modeling for State Mod, the estimated cost is $462,000 for 2023 to 2025.
Any questions of Steve? If not, could I have a motion, please? I'll move, Rick. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Bonsack,
Yes.
Karlsruhe,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt,
Yes.
Bean.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Very good.
So two task orders left. I'm going to move on.
You want to do them both?
I think they should be separate.
Okay. We'll do them separate. Tab 8.
If you're asking me, yeah. So tab H, Program Management Information System Procurement. We purchased eBuilder. It's software that will track all of the paperwork for construction and study and financial information. It's software that contractors will use, Garrison staff will use, and also all of our consultants will use it. It's a very handy way to track paperwork rather than some other cumbersome methods. I would say we're very close with having eBuilder set up. It's been quite the challenge, but I would say we have at least a few more months remaining before eBuilder would even go live. This task order, you go to the next, it's on your screen. This task order actually is going to expand the licenses. So right now we just have a handful of licenses, but if our 3 contractors, so we have Garney, we have Carstensen and Oscar Renda, and all of our consultants are going to be using it. We're going to have to expand the licenses to, roughly 30 licenses. And once we get it up and running and we're live, we'll also need some more training. And no doubt, we're going to see things that we're not going to like. And so in this task order, there's also built-in time for Black and Veatch to help us get eBuilder the way we want it. So the task order line items are above here. We're asking for approval of $498,000 for Program Management Information System.
Any questions of Kip on this? Do you have a motion?
Second.
Mark and Bill. Any comments? Roll call vote, please.
Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Honsack,
Yes.
Carlsrud,
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt, Mann.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
So does this mean, Kip, once you have this, I can call you and find out where everything is?
That's correct. You can call Mary, myself, Dwayne.
How about
others.
Dwayne?
Yep.
Will Dwayne know?
Dwayne will know. Yes, he will. We'll have him trained up.
Okay. Task order 534, Trans Pipeline East, Contract 4, final design.
Last task order, heads up, this is a large task order, cost-wise. This is for final design of contract 4. So up on your screen, you can see where contract 4 is. It's roughly 30 miles long. I think it's 27 miles long. So it's a large distance, a lot of design that has to be done in this section. That's why I'm trying to set the stage for the cost that you're going to see on the next page. It's in line with the other final design task orders. It just happens to be this is a larger one, larger in miles for contract. It'll allow us to design the 27 miles anywhere from 72 to 84 inch, depending on how much water we're going to deliver to Lake Ashtabula. We're going to have to work with the Corps of Engineers over the next few months to figure out how they are interpreting waters of the U.S. In this area, there's significant wetlands that we need to figure out whether they're jurisdictional or non-jurisdictional. If they're non-jurisdictional, we can go through them, but if they're jurisdictional, that means we have to tunnel under them or go around them. Other permitting issues and surveying assistance is included. We've also included the hydraulic modeling update in this section. As I talked to you earlier, we switched the intake from Washburn to McCluskey, and with that, we had to do hydraulic modeling update, and where we're having to move the site of the brake tanks, and so that is going to be included under this task order. We're also going to expand the geotechnical investigation. All those pictures we brought of dewatering and all the groundwater that we're dealing with, we would really like to have more soil borings and more pump tests so that the contractor doesn't build in risk into the project price. So if the contractor understands where the water's at and how much, they can build that into the price, and hence we hope lowering the price of the contract. I talked about this. There's potentially up to 20 tunnels that we'll need to design. And then our thought is to break this up into 3 contracts for the bidding assistance portion. So we'd break that up into 4A, B, and C. So when you list it all out, the line items, I just covered these, but you can see the line items if you want to talk about any specific one. The cost of this task order is $7,183,000. Be happy to take any questions on this one.
Kip, will that be all done this summer?
I believe this one would take us longer than 12 months. I think this is more like an 18. We would want this shovel ready for the next biennium,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
How many miles of this is done, will be done then total that we have in the ground already?
Design-wise?
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to this map because that's a really good question. So let's just start with contract 6. Contract 6 is fully designed, on the shelf, ready to bid. Contract 7, you authorized us to do final design, so we're right in the middle of that one. All of contract 5 is taken care of. Contract 4, we're asking for authorization today, and I'm estimating that's about a 2-year deal. Paul, did I misspeak on that? Okay. And then you see the contracts 1 through 3 there on the very far left. We kind of consider that NDOS. We broke that up into 3 chunks, and you have already authorized us to do final design on one of the chunks. In case federal money came forward, we would be shovel ready. So we are nearing that end of having all pipeline contracts fully, or at least authorized to do fully final design.
Okay.
Did that help at all?
Yep, thank you.
Very informative.
I should also mention that the 27 miles is roughly, $150 million worth of construction costs. Maybe even approaching 160 there.
Very good. Do I have a motion?
So move Schmidt.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Schmaltz, Schmidt and Schmaltz. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Okay, I'm going to start this a little different. I'll go with Rick first. Bigwood. Honsack.
Yes.
Karlsruhe.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes.
Johnson. Mahoney.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Schmaltz. Schmidt.
Yes.
Ian.
Yeah.
Eltoff.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Very good. We go to our Financial Advisory Committee. Maureen Sorstad. Is she online or who's good with it?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Got a
Well,
proposed
good
budget?
morning. Yes. Good morning, Chair Mahoney, members of the board. Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the ability to attend and give you this update virtually. First of all, just a general overview of the Financial Advisory Committee. We did meet in Grand Forks here on January 9th, went through different matters that include the two items that are on your agenda. We looked at the proposed two-tier methodology, looked at the different changes that have taken place in updating the model and just looking at a summary of what the plan is to bring forward and those user group meetings coming up. But first of all, tab J in your material is the proposed 2024 LAWA budget that does come to you as a board out of the Financial Advisory Committee with a recommendation to approve. It includes expenses in total of just over $205,000, primarily made up of legal, engineering, financial, administrative costs, and revenue from dues and cost shares. Some of the discussion with the budget was if a matter did come up in the year, we can move forward with an amendment on that budget. But that item, if there are any further questions regarding the detailed makeup, I know Mary provided an update to our committee and she's there to address questions at all or as well. But that, as I said, is included in tab J, recommended for approval for that budget.
Or any comment?
I'll just make one comment because it was asked at the Financial Advisory Committee that this looks like a very lean budget. And the reason that it looks more lean is because it doesn't include the bond payments for Series C, and now we're into Series D. This is just everything that comes out of the Lake Agassiz checking account, because Garrison Diversion actually took out Series C bond and we were approved for Series D. So those payments come from the systems to Garrison Diversion. So that's why it looks pretty lean, because it's everything that Lake Agassiz is actually paying for out of their checking account.
Okay, any questions? Do I have a motion? Is there a second? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Mayor Darters, no questions? You kind of like our budget, 200 million, like that size? And we're spending money almost like the diversion now. Roll call.
Okay, I'm going to alternate this again. Bonsack.
Yes.
Karlsruhe.
Yes.
Erdman.
Yes. Yes.
Johnson. Mahoney.
Yes.
Riley.
Yes.
Schmaltz. Schmidt.
Yes.
Ian.
Yes.
Eltoff.
Yes.
And Bigwood. Motion's carried.
Now you get into the complex part, right, Maureen? You're going to talk to us about the two-tier
Yes.
cost allocation. A lot of good work done on
Yes.
this.
A lot of work done on this, a lot of good discussion, a lot of good feedback. I believe my presentation will be shared there with you in the room. But we've had a lot of discussion regarding what the right methodology is to move forward. We had heard concerns when looking at this initial review of the PPA. On the next slide, we're going to go through some of those concerns. And a working group was put together. It included LAWA leadership. We looked at exploring just some potential changes to that recommended methodology going forward. And we also pulled in some feedback from select participants, as well as, like I said, the Financial Advisory Committee met regarding a different approach to look at assigning those costs and benefits going forward. Ultimately, the Financial Advisory Committee did move forward with a recommendation to change this methodology that we'll go through with you on the following slides regarding a two-tier system, but a bit of a more simplified approach, but also fair and equitable. So going forward, we looked at what are the concerns. There were concerns over just the different pricing structure with the four-tier method, and particularly between domestic and industrial water. We looked at how do we look at the balance of these benefits, but also maintain that user group philosophy. So we'll look at those projected changes on the next slide, but the current methodology really just, does it match, does it not match the current project? So we looked to update, or we did update the model to reflect those new cost estimates, as well as the NDOS alternative and this new methodology. It's, for simplification, four-tier system becomes quite complex to explain and manage, and looked at simplifying that to this two-tier approach that will eliminate that extra complexity. And also, as we go forward to our policymakers and explaining this model and the benefit we're getting and the cost that we're assigning and solidifying that project support, this looked to be a good move to simplify this process as we look to explain that to our boards. But ultimately, and the main goal is we want to make sure the results are reviewed to ensure financial impacts are in line, with those benefits received, and done so in a fair and equitable manner. If you want to go to the next slide. So some of the changes that we wanted to incorporate, we have had some great financial successes, which we've spoken about throughout. We did secure that $240 million work plan with $180 million state funds and $60 million local share. With that came the legislative intent of that $953 million that Mary referred to earlier today. Also, the NDOS alternative is key to this project, saved significant capital and operating savings. But also a huge impact is that Bank of North Dakota financing with the 40-year 2%, as well as the shaping of that repayment with the 2-year repayment deferral, the interest only years 3 through 5, and that shape principle, so we can grow into those payments over time. So in looking at the financial planning and the model to be used to bring forward to those user participants as we go forward, we wanted to incorporate all these changes into that financial plan and develop that around these cost share financing terms, and also with the allocation of the model refinements to review as we roll this out to projected users. So basically, we want to look at, what's best to bring forward to the users. I believe Sean stated we're 90% ready for those to roll this all out in information to the user meetings. Like I said, the committee level, we had general discussion about some summary information to move forward. We used Carrington as an example in information that shows the participants regarding the project and the costs and how we're projected to grow into that cost and what each user's cost is to bring forward to those meetings. And we spoke, and I believe you're going to speak to this later, but we spoke of, if those meetings should be more regionally led and have like users in regional meetings as we go forward, bringing this information out to users and include local LAWA leadership on those. If you want to go to the next slide. I'm going to let Sean, who's there in the room with you, speak much to this. And just as we looked at this more simplified approach of a two-tier structure and looking at that, domestic versus industrial and how we're setting that up in tiers so we can bring that forward to our boards as we look to get users to basically sign into this project as we move forward. And then maybe when Sean is done, I can just give you just kind of a sense of where Grand Forks is.
Yeah, thank you, Maureen. So, as you know, one of the big things Maureen hit on in the discussion that we had and all of the working group meetings that we went through, big idea here in relooking at the allocation model was the idea of simplification. Over the course of the past 5 years, we have presented the previous model, the 4-tier model, multiple times. And generally what I would say is, every time we do present that, it is quite complex. If you'll recall, there was a tiering assignment matrix. There were multiple definitions that went along with that tiering assignment matrix. The PPA exhibits that got drafted along with the 4-tier model ended up becoming quite complex in their draft and read and review. And so as we've discussed, simplification was a really big underlying concept to looking at the allocation model. Ultimately, what we did land upon was a far more simplified, compressed 2-tier proposed approach. The approach, as I said, is far more simple in its application to the point where I can describe it now on one slide. And that's the slide that we have in front of you here today, where, we're not necessarily looking at, as Maureen said, domestic or industrial water having inherent pricing differences. More so, we're looking at, again, the idea of how do we simply describe how someone will become a tier 1 or tier 2 user within the allocation model. And as we just walk through the content of the slide here, so from a domestic standpoint, really how you become that tier 1 user is if you do have that large current domestic need in the near term, or you're looking at complete supply replacement. And primarily as we look at the large current drought needs, that is the city of Fargo. There are a couple of prospective users, primarily as we talk about the city of Washburn, that is looking at the project and the use of the intake as a supply replacement. That would also place them as a tier 1 domestic user in this type of approach. Tier 2 really for all other domestic systems that are looking at, or for all other systems that are looking at a potential domestic nomination from the project. On the minor shortage side of things, drought needs far out into the future. Redundant supply needs, potential second use of the water. So users downstream of Fargo, think of Grand Forks in this instance, where Fargo has to use the water, return it. Grand Forks is a second user of the water. All of those would be instances where you become a tier 2 user. From an industrial standpoint, pretty straightforward. We're really looking at it on the basis of, are you on the core system and is the water really easy to get access to, or are you not on the core system and is the water, or is it required that you need to build a significant amount of additional infrastructure in order to access water from either the pipeline or the river system? And so, like I said, from an industrial standpoint, pretty straightforward. The one thing I would note, and we're going to show some results here in just a second, but the thing I would note on the right-hand side here is how a user chooses to access the project is big in terms of how they ultimately would be assigned to a tier system. And the example that's been discussed quite a bit through our review meetings is more like on the Northeast users side of things. So those users that are up in the Northeast corner of the state, they have a couple of options that they're considering as far as how they could access the project. One would be off of the river system, so allowing the water to flow down the Cheyenne, up the Red, and looking at potential intake locations, either like in a Grand Forks or a Grafton location. But the alternative to that is Beech Ridge Pipeline, which is an ongoing discussion. If they did choose Beech Ridge Pipeline versus river supply, it would change that approach. How we first run the model, consistent with how the 4-tier model was run, was assuming that all of those users would access off the river system. Like I said, changes may happen through user discussions as users are looking at their nominations, their access locations and approach. But the first run of the model, like I said, is looking at it off the river for those users. This table, and this is a table we have provided throughout our working group meetings. We provided summary handouts of this table last week at the LAWA FAC, is a summary for all of the users, how their original nominations were ultimately assigned to the 4-tier model. And we're not going through all the gory detail here as to ultimately how you got to those tiers, but where they were at within the 4-tier model and where that nomination is now proposed to fall within the 2-tier model. So if you look on the right-hand side of this graphic, you can see current model, whether you're tier 1 through 4, and proposed model, whether you're tier 1 through 2 or 1 or 2 per the prior slide and that assignment methodology that we just walked through. In order to quickly, keynote how you were assigned to either the tier 1 or tier 2 based on those assignment rules that I highlighted on the prior slide, that is the last column here. So when we go out and meet with all the users, if they're looking to understand really how did we assign them to 1 or 2 under this proposed approach, this is a summary table that showed where they were and where we're proposing they be under the new recommended model. Generally, what I would say overall is the changes were minor to moderate in most cases. The right-hand side of this table is showing the delta from the current 4-tier model to the proposed 2-tier model. You could see for the most part, we have minor percent delta between the two models as you go, up and down all of the various users based on, like I said, the prior where they were assigned either the tier 1 or tier 2. The biggest shifts within the model within itself, and there's a lot of discussion between Fargo and Grand Forks through the process, as Maureen mentioned, there were a number of working group meetings, and where ultimately some of the largest shift was, if you look at Fargo's proposed allocation down negative 3.94% and Grand Forks up 2.5%. There was quite a bit of discussion around, is that fair and equitable, as Maureen mentioned. And those are the largest, that is the largest movement ultimately that resulted from this model. There were other moderate shifts, like I mentioned, cases like Carrington, others, where you see some of that movement. And as Maureen also mentioned, we did have some further discussion with smaller participants. Specifically, we did have a meeting with Mayor Erdman, Mayor Carlsrud, to test run some of this and the description of it. And go through that. But like I said, on the right-hand side here, you can see, for the most part, the changes are pretty minor to moderate. The larger shifts are between Fargo and Grand Forks. Fargo and Grand Forks had quite a bit of discussion about that, and ultimately both agreed to move forward with this as the proposed new approach on the tiering model. So with that, Chairman Mahoney, I would stand for any questions.
Well, I'd like to thank Mayors Carlsrud and Erdman for helping us out, because there were our local users that kind of vetted it a bit too as well. And Grand Forks has been really good about this too. Todd, your team has been good with Bruce kind of going over this. But it seems more simplistic and fairness is what the issue is. So are there any questions? Because they've been digesting it for quite some time, but some of the board members probably haven't seen this before. Any questions?
If I could just, also just mention, as Sean said, just for broader awareness, yes, the biggest shift is from Fargo to Grand Forks. And from Grand Forks, when we were looking at this, ultimately, we just wanted to look at the impact on all users. And as Sean said, this is, minor for other users. It's generally the largest shift between Fargo and Grand Forks. But ultimately, we just want to be fair and equitable of how these costs are allocated with those benefits received from the project. And I think we came to a good conclusion here as a recommendation to bring forward on an equitable way forward. So I just wanted to plug that in. So thank you.
Well, that's excellent, and I know when they first started the Tier 4 program is when the project was 200 million, so we'd love to go back to that, wouldn't we? That would work well. Do we need to approve this then today? Is that what we need to do? Any discussion, questions? Want to digest it, or are we ready to make an action? Bernie Dardis.
The question I have is, when you look at your allocation dynamics, there's some communities on there that haven't committed yet. So your calculations are in a best-case scenario that they all participate. Do we have an alternate look at of some of those as they drop out? And then my next question would be, is Moorhead included in Fargo?
So Maureen, the question is, if some people opt out, does that change the dynamics? Then does the rest of the team have to pick up more of the cost?
Yes, we've talked about this, and Sean, I don't know what numbers you have with you there, worst case scenario, but we have talked about, as we go through those user meetings, we'll have to talk through that, and if there's changes in nominations and how that impacts. I believe with this, it's still a good way to move forward with how those, and I believe it'll be minimal impacts. Of course, Fargo and Grand Forks are the largest share of this project. Sean, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that.
Yeah, I think you hit on it there, Maureen, where it is going to be a bit of a moving target as we go through the user meeting process. We may see users added, we may see users removed from the list. The way we've tested the allocation model to this point was all based upon the nominations as they were established through the project development agreement process. So all of the users that signed up to the development agreement in 2016 and the nominations that they had associated with that were what all of our model runs and allocation model analysis was based upon. As we go through all the user meetings, we may, like I said, see some users drop out. We may see nominations change, and we may see some new users to the discussion. Mayor Dardis, you mentioned, is Moorhead in this currently? No, they are not. And so, if we looked at the addition of Moorhead either through a Fargo nomination or independently, that would modify this. The thing I would say is this would be the approach through which we would continue to look at that as those dynamics shift and as we go through all of those discussions here over the course of the next year.
I guess my main question is that if you go back to the chart again, please, with the percentage of allocation, if you take a look at Fargo, West Fargo, CAS, 66% current model, 66.74%. If there's some of these folks that drop out, does that delta change?
Yes, it would.
See, that's my whole point. Then we're working under a premise of the data is irrelevant then.
Yeah, to be presumptive, and let's just say as a scenario, Grand Forks and Fargo are for certain in the project. In that instance, adding up 62.8 and 16.9 under the new model, that's, about 80% of the project. And so the real key is in the remainder 20, how much potential movement is there? And that's where, the sensitivity of this will lie, is where are the changing dynamics within that remainder 20%. And we will continue to update this as we learn more and go through that process. But we needed an approach to start from in order to be analyzing those changes as we go, and this would be the approach that we would start from.
But as that percentage goes up, because there's less participants, then it has true dollars and cents to what our base water rates are going to be, and we're dealing with that. So
Maybe
is
discussion.
there a timeline set when we're going to determine that this is the final as to what those participants are? 2025, December 2025, or something like that.
I believe the goal is, and Steve is standing, he can correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been meeting as a team, and our goal is through the year 2024 to get to the point where we are asking users to either execute or not the project participation agreement. And once the project participation agreement is executed and we understand at the cutoff date we set here, which I don't think we've hardlined it yet, but when we get to the point where that participation agreement we've determined who's going to sign or who's not going to sign, that is when we will finalize the allocation percentages. There will be an approach within the PPA should users come along down the road, 2, 3, 5, 20 years, how we can reallocate at that time. But these will be set for the start of the project once the PPA is executed and we determine who has executed the PPA. I don't know, Tammy, if you
I
want
think
to add
it's also,
Go ahead, Maureen.
I think it's also important to point out as we're looking at, the impact on water rates. There's been moving parts other than this methodology too that will, go through with the users what that projected impact would be on their water. But with the shaped financing, the favorable financing terms, the NDOS saving costs of the project, all that being incorporated, trying to reduce, those cost shares as much as possible. And as we go forward, I think it's, if there were federal money infused in here too, of course, that would help everyone, which is not reflected in these numbers.
And Mayor, can I address one thing too? I just want to emphasize, as Sean was saying, we're starting somewhere with this allocation, and then it may change by the time you're asked to sign the PPA, because it'll depend on who's in or out. But the way the PPA is set up right now is that there's a latecomer fee associated with people. So you may have to pay more upfront from a capital cost standpoint, and then operational costs are treated a little bit differently. But in terms of, you could get some of that back. And the way it's set up is there's a latecomer, like a extra kicker, an adder that's added to it when somebody comes in and says, I want to get some water from the project. Not only do they have to pay you back for what you advanced for them, but there's an additional component, a little extra, that goes essentially into the fund. So that's the way it's set up. Somebody has to pay for it up front. So you're all going to be taxed a little higher to cover anything unallocated. However, you should get that back down the road. So your project costs down the road should be better.
Okay, Todd?
I think to Mayor Dardis's point, if you look at some of the smaller users, I think are generally they nominated due to industry, where they didn't need the water per se for domestic. So I think all users are going to have to look at their nomination, because to create a concentric two-tier system, if you're along the main area and you don't need extensive piping network, you're kind of pushed into that tier one. So where Grand Forks is tier 2 on domestic, but we're tier 1 on industrial. All things being equal, we would want to be tier 2 in both. However, with a two-tier system, we have to be tier 1 on industry because we're along the Red River and we can draw in the water. However, Stutzman County, they're going to have a significant pipeline segment to get that industrial water to them. Therefore, they need to be pushed into tier 2. So when I look through these various percentages, what we try to do is to mitigate those users as much as possible. That's why you see a lot of negatives with that, where it's less. But I think when these meetings are really going to be important to look through the nominations, and most people have nominated years ago, and I think that nomination is going to be quite critical as part of this. And you are correct, Mayor Dardis, if our share is going to go up, but at least we've, as part of this, we've created a system in which we're going to proportionally share in whatever that increase is. But we try to really be mindful to make sure everything we could do to provide a system in which people could stay into the nominations of this. So I think when we go out and visit with them, it's incredibly important that LAWA get really engaged, and that's how we got to a new system here. And I think to also have some key LAWA members as we go through the various systems, and that was the important part of having Valley City and Carrington. And even going through with Carrington and Mayor Erdman is that they saw a significant increase. However, they're near where the pipeline is going to be, so Mayor Erdman understood that. I think the other game changer is with the NDOS. You know, this would be a whole game changer if we didn't have NDOS and whatever that $200 million savings that we're seeing here, because with the additional pipe costs that we had, that would create even more of a challenge. So I think with that $200 million saving, it's going to make this a lot better off, Mayor Dardis. But without that, we'd have even more significant challenges moving forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Steve, you seem to be wanting to say something.
Mayor Mahoney, the question was asked by Mayor Dardis about Moorhead, and at the end of 2023, the city of Fargo did ask us to do a new analysis for their water name nomination for the project. Todd mentioned that the nominations were done quite a while ago and back in 2016. And over that 7-year period, there's been a pretty precipitative drop in the per capita per day water use within the city of Fargo, within the city of West Fargo, and then urbanized Cass. And so as a result, from that 2023 analysis, should Moorhead Public Service elect to nominate at 6.9 CFS, which is the number that they've thrown out preliminarily, it appears that Fargo's nomination will be able to cover Fargo, West Fargo, urbanized Cass, and Moorhead Public Service. And so to address that question, I guess we'd never even shared that with Sean because it just is hot off the press, but Moorhead would be de facto included in this analysis, and the effect would be that the cost for Fargo would be spread out over a broader user base when you add Moorhead Public Service, which should slightly reduce West Fargo's costs then.
So stay friendly with Moorhead, will you, Bernie, please? Thank you. Any other discussion? Can I have a motion? Dave, move it? Okay, is there a second? Good, you're doing good today. You're getting in those motions. Thank you. Any discussion? You'll be interested when we talk to local users. And I think Dave and Tom helped to see a little bit of that. They saw the effect on your community. So that really did help us a lot. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, let's start with Carlsrud.
Yes.
Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson, Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt, Vian,
Yes.
Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Monzak.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Construction update. What's going on this winter when it's 40 below?
Well, not a lot's going on this winter. That's a good point. We'd like to just review where we've what we've covered so far. Oh, what just happened? Okay. Try that again. I think we should celebrate our success, and let's cover the first 4 contracts there. The Missouri River Intake Wet Well, that is done, completed. The Cheyenne River Discharge Structure, the big concrete structure next to the river, that is done, completed. 5A, that was our groundbreaking contract for the pipeline structure and under the highway. That was about 1.3 miles. That is done and complete. And probably the most significant and the most risky contract out there was the screen structure and tunnel. So that was a 1,600-foot tunnel under the Missouri River. That was done, completed without any issues. So those are really good things. Before we talk about 5B, and sometimes contract 5B we get a little negative on. I just wanted to hit on the positives there. Keep those in mind as you're talking to others. And then contracts that are underway, contract 5B, we'll talk about that a little bit. And then we did, award contract 5C to Oscar Renda and 5D to Karstensen Contracting. So if you just look at the construction contracts out there, you've approved $218 million worth of construction contracts. Big picture. You have $700,000 in change orders in total. There's multiple that add up to that. So your revised contract amount that's out there is $217 million for 0.3% change. So there are some pending change orders out there that we know are coming, for example, under contract 5B and others. We anticipate that at about 1.3 million. And so with those changes, we're probably up to about 219 million, which would be about 0.6% change. Those are pretty good statistics. The pink line up here shows the pipe that we have in the ground. I think we're at 6.7 miles in the ground. And the gaps there where we have to fill in over the next year. This is just on contract 5B. And you'll see some pictures coming up about the dewatering and all the water we discovered out there. As a reminder, our last month or two out there, we really did put in enough pipe in the ground weekly to keep up with what we anticipated to have a successful project. Early on, it wasn't the case, but as they got going, the climate got a little drier, we were able to hit those marks. Things they did out there, they did add some more crews under contract 5B. They took a lot more aggressive approach to dewatering, used sand points and sumps out there. Some challenges that we identified are the deep cuts. So the pipeline is deep in some areas. We're going deep in some areas so that those above ground structures are moved onto section and quarter lines, and rather than being out in the middle of a field where a farmer can't go around them. We did hit more cobbles and boulders with the tunneling system under the railroad, so that was a significant challenge. Again, some of the pictures of the dewatering effort. But as July and August came on again, we were really able to get aggressive. Here's some pictures of, on the left-hand side are sand points. You hook a vacuum pump up to that, and that's one way they were able to dewater the site. On the right-hand side is just a sump. Depending on if it's clay material or or more sandy soil, will determine what kind of pump system is used. And also something that we don't have a picture of is we tried laying drain tile. The contractor tried laying drain tile down parallel with the pipeline. That seemed to work pretty good. So they're getting very creative out there. A couple pictures on the tunneling under the railroad track and some of the rocks that were hit. Ultimately, they had to lower their elevation about 15 feet, I believe, lower to avoid that rock layer. So with some of those challenges, we do know that potential change orders are coming forward this winter yet. We've been working with Garney on trying to get those to move forward. So the red ones up here are, change orders in the negative for us. So we know, for example, in the very first one, $1.5 million for discharge piping. An additional 60 days is what they're asking for their contract extension. The other one there that I would hit on, we did get some changes with road crossings, and so working with Foster County, we were able to eliminate a big shoe fly that would create a big detour around that area, so there's some savings there. So contract 5B, the original contract was $45.9 million. You've already approved $1 million worth of change orders. And so that contract is at about 44.9. And that was due to roughly the biggest change there was eliminating the fiber optic materials and installation of that contract. The original completion date was September 30th. That was the substantial completion date, sorry. With a 25-day extension, their current substantial completion date was October 25th. Their final completion date was December 24, 23. We did not hit that, and so we're working through those with Garney right now. Garney Construction did present at the Garrison Diversion Executive Committee. Their anticipated schedule looks like what's on the screen. At that time, I think it was roughly Thanksgiving. They were wrapping everything up. They anticipate mobilizing May 1st this spring, finish putting pipe in the ground by September of 2024, do the hydro testing in November 2024, and then complete all work by December 12th of 2024. With that type of schedule that you see on your screen, there's 390 days past final completion, so that would fall into the liquidated damages category. In our specs, it's about $2,000 a day, and so that's $780,000. And just 2 more slides. So things will change out there this year in Foster County area. The construction crew for 5B out there wrapping things up. We're going to add 2 more construction crews in the area. So we're going to have a lot of people, a lot of trucks in the ground, a lot of pipe being delivered, a lot of coordination happening. I'm sure we'll screw up from time to time with something. And then just the field staff alone, when it comes to the construction crew, is going to grow from, 2 or 3 people. It's going to grow to about 15 people just on the field inspectors. And so we look forward to this summer and getting to work on everything. And I think the very last thing I'd like to mention are this winter, I believe those construction crews would like to start delivering pipe and aggregate so that when spring rolls around, they don't have to wait for road restrictions to come on. They can just go to work in the spring.
Very good. Program budget at tab K.
Yeah, I think this is the last item here for me. So in your board books, tab K is the biennium work plan. You all spent a lot of time working on this. I'm going to get there. Hang on. So all of you worked really hard at the legislature, getting the $180 million from the state, combined with your local money. You put together a work plan for $244 million. And I want to thank you for approving those task orders today. But in general, most of this biennium work plan has been approved. And I'm just going to quickly walk through these, the ones that are approved, so you can understand what you've done. So item number 1 and 2 are kind of garrison diversion items that deal with legal, communication, property acquisition. I'm going to go to line 3. The transmission pipeline East 5C, that has been awarded. Item number 4, transmission pipeline East 5D, that's been awarded. Item number 5, contract 6A, that one's been put on hold. Lake Agassiz asked us to put that one on hold until we talk to the small users to see who's in or out. Item number 6, NDOS transmission pipeline contract 3, final design. That one's already been approved. Turn the page over to item 7. Pipeline contract 4A and B. You approved today. Final design on that. Number 8. Pipeline contract 7, final design. You've approved that. Moving on to number 9, the preliminary design for the McCluskey Canal intake and pump station. You approved that today. Number 10, biota water treatment plant, main pump station. You approved that today. Number 11 is the hydraulic brake tanks. That is approved today. Item number 12, expand the licenses of eBuilder. You did that today. And earlier in the year, you already approved the program management to support the entire project. And then on to the last page. Item number 14, the user outreach and user commitment task order. You guys have already approved that, and we're about ready to go out to start talking to small systems. You'll hear about that later today. Item number 15, operational planning, phase 3. You approved that today. Financial planning support. You approved that last time you met. And then item number 17 on your biennium work plan is the contingency. So thank you. It's a big task. It took us, all since last July to put all these contracts together, get them into motion. And so now we're ready to go for the entire biennium.
So I think you're kind of congratulating the board because they did such hard work today. Is that what you're doing, Kip?
Yep.
Your
Patting
voice is
everybody on
getting
their
a
back.
hoarse. We made you talk as much as you can talk, but this is a lot of work. 180 million is hard to spend. Yeah. Do we need to prove any of this at this point, or are we all set? That's
Just
all been
information.
pre-approved. Okay. Are you going to take a work plan status update as well, Al, or have you already really done that?
It's in the board book for your information. I won't go through it because all of our narratives went through it. And the last item that's on there is, just want to let you know, the NDOS portion of the project, the 32 miles, I believe we're at about 70% of acquiring the right-of-way. So very successful. We started that effort in August, so it's not too bad.
Very good. Mary, you're up, program schedule, tab M.
Sure. If you'd please turn
Thanks,
to
Deb.
tab M. That is the program schedule. Actually, I don't know that I need to cover it in great detail. Kip did a really good job on the construction update. But as you'll know, that the first 4 contracts are complete. Shows that 5B is at 70%. Kip kind of covered that. And also stated that we have 5C and D under contract and waiting to do 6A. So it's kind of just a update that's already been covered, but you have some written documents there to show where we are on each project.
And then tab Q basically is the work plan for 24. I think you covered that basically today, right?
Yeah, we put your biennium work plan into one 2024 work plan, what we anticipate working on this year. It's in there. We would ask for your approval or additions in anything that we missed. But yep, it's in your books.
Steve Berrien, talk to us about user meetings.
Mr. Chairman, at the last meeting, I rolled out a draft user packet, and we used the city of Carrington as a example of how we would do that. The one thing we were waiting for was that tiered cost model to get approved, because we didn't want to have to walk back on numbers that we proposed to people shortly after distributing a large packet. As the FAC worked through that process, Maureen and Mary and Sean put together a 2024 financial summary, a 4-pager that really does a really good job. It's a lot of reallys, but does a good job of outlining how, in this case, we use Carrington as the example again, how they would potentially fit into the project, and attempts to answer any questions they would have. And so as a result, with your concurrence, without having to approve it, we would like to pivot a little bit on the information packet, where we have all that extensive information still available, but the group, various legal counsels, engineers, staff, everybody weighed in, and we think getting that 4-page summary out to everybody as a crisp way of re-engaging them, possibly having a few calls in conjunction with that, so some of the users that haven't been as involved as a Fargo or a Grand Forks or a Carrington or a Valley City or whomever could benefit from our discussions. And then once we get them engaged with that, then we would provide the more detailed information packet, so they don't get this huge contract and this huge packet that overwhelms them, rather kind of slide in with more of a creative approach. And so everything I presented at the last meeting still stands, but now with your approval of the 2-tiered cost model, H-West is scurrying to get those 4-page summaries together for everybody, and then we'll move forward with distributing that to the users as our first step. Be glad to add any questions or take any suggestions.
The 2 toughest mayors, Carlsruhe and Erdman, and they think you're headed the right direction?
You skipped Dardis, but otherwise, yes, we're on the right track.
Okay. Tom, any comment? Did you like what they presented or see it was reasonable?
Well, of course, I didn't like what was presented, because the cost of Carrington went up substantially from what we were talking about originally. But I get the drift on this, because we're only 3/4 of a mile away from the pipeline. Of course, our use would be industrial, and that's kind of a betting on the come type thing, where we don't necessarily have a project sitting here waiting for excess water at this time. So there's some things that'll be discussed when we have our meeting, but I know our city council is, we'll look at this and make some decisions. So it's, I get the whole concept and I understand the project. I guess now I just have to, our city council and myself will have to sit down and say, well, how does Carrington really fit into this as a city and as a potential user?
And Mayor Mahoney, if I could maybe add just a little color to that. Mayor Erdman and Carrington nominated for 2.5 CFS back in 2016, which for a smaller user like that was a pretty aggressive number, because they knew they were on the pipeline and they knew they've had quite a bit of industrial development. They also have Stutzman to the south as their rural water district, and they have Ramsey to the north as their other rural water district. So as they look at their overall strategy, an industry that had workers living in Carrington may have water service out in Stutzman's area or out in Ramsey's area. So one of the things that the mayor's pointed out is he needs to better understand where Stutzman's going to land and where Ramsey's going to land in addition to Carrington to make kind of a wise decision for that overall region. And I think those dynamics are going to play out in many of the areas across the project.
Very good. Any questions of Steve? Thank you. Mary, you're on. Financial report.
If you would please turn to tab P in your books. This is Lake Agassiz financial statement for 2023. So it's from January 1st to December 31st. And I'll just point out that the middle column that says actuals from 11/30/23, that is supposed to be 12/31 of 2023. So to recap, Lake Agassiz dues income was expected to be $610,000, actual income of $628,000. For the expenses, total expenses were estimated to be $680,000, actual expenses $746,000. And the beginning bank balance started out at $498,000, total income of $628,000, meaning that there were funds available of $1.127 million. After all of the expenses paid of $746,377, there's $380,851 in Lake Agassiz bank account as of December 31st. And if you look at where we show the bills paid, I've highlighted the ones that have been paid since the last meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, I sure would answer any questions on that.
Do we need a motion to approve this or,
Yes, please.
and the bill paid? So
Please.
basically, could I have a motion to approve both of those, a statement as well as bills paid? Thanks, Mark. And is there a second? Second, Bill. Any discussion? Roll call vote.
We'll start with Director Erdman,
Yes.
Johnson. Mahoney,
Yes?
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt,
Yes.
Lynn, Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Bonsack,
Yes.
and Carlsrud.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. You have then the membership dues in tab R, Mary, and you have tab S as well. Any comment?
Yes, so tab R is the membership dues letter that we would send out to all of the Lake Agassiz membership. I don't think that there's a large change in that, just updating where we are on the project, that we've done a lot of construction. And there was no change to the dues structure as of right now, so we would look to answer any questions on that or have a motion to approve sending out the dues.
Can I have a motion?
Also move.
Jim, and is there a second? Moved and seconded. Mark? Any questions? Roll call vote, please.
Johnson. Mahoney,
Yes.
Riley,
Yes.
Schmaltz, Schmidt,
Yes.
Ian, Eltoff,
Yes.
Bigwood, Bonsack, Carlsrud,
Yes.
and Erdman.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Unfinished business, City of Washburn Rainbow Energy Update. Is that Steve Marion as well?
Chairman Mahoney, for quite a few years now, we've been courting the city of Washburn as a potential user off of that Missouri River intake structure that's been built. And we've gained a lot of momentum to a large part as a result of Mayor Mahoney's direct relationship that he's developed with the mayor of Washburn. As we move forward with trying to help them, Washburn had secured a FEMA grant for their independent project historically, which demonstrated that they had a pretty significant problem in the community. And as we looked at serving them, we thought that a FEMA grant for adding a new user would take some of the pressure off the project financially. And so we worked with the North Dakota Department of Emergency Services, and they indicated that yes, indeed, Washburn would possibly be eligible for a FEMA grant for their participation in the project. We can't get reimbursement for any of the things that are already in the ground. So like the caisson, the tunnel, the intake, the small share that Washburn has to pay of that is something that we can't get additional grant money for. But for the pump station that we would build for Washburn and the pipeline that we build to Washburn, we can get potentially a FEMA grant for up to 75%. And so my understanding is for that project component that would come off the top, we would then apply for take the 25% and submit that to the state for another cost share of 75-25. And so in essence, Washburn would only end up paying 25% to 25%, and the incremental addition to add them would be very insignificant to the program for all the rest of you. And so that draft application was submitted last Thursday. We worked hand in hand with the Department of Water Resources and Department of Emergency Services in putting it together, and then they will help us submit the final application in February, and we should know in July whether we received that or not.
Could we apply for a FEMA grant for the whole project? That sounds pretty good. 75% we could take off, pretty good. I think.
We could try, but I think taking it in bite-sized chunks may be more successful.
I think, Kip, you've done a great job on this, and it's really worked well now that we're working on this, and I hope they now picked a route, and they seem to be pleased with where we're headed and what's going on. So hopefully we'll have somebody using that pump station sometime soon, so we'd really like to have that continue.
And then Rainbow Energy, just to wrap things up, is still out there. That's more of a state consideration, and so the ball is in the court of the Department of Water Resources and the governor's office on how they would potentially work with Rainbow. I think they're working on their feed study right now in terms of looking at what the extra water they're going to need, and we thought we'd hear from Rainbow sometime early in 2025.
Okay, thank you. New business, we just have two associate members, Wapton and Devils Lake, that have kind of opting out to be part of Agassiz. So the question is to take them, Mary, off the list basically, or?
Yeah, I think we have a few associate members, but I know that we received an email when Mayor Johnson was the mayor of Devils Lake, stating to not be an associate member anymore. And then we received one from the mayor of Wapaton. And there's a couple other associate members that we just haven't heard any contact with. Yeah.
So is it official action the board needs to take?
Yeah, does the board want to do anything with those associate members is what the question
If you
is.
could kindly bring a report back to us and we'll do an action item, then anybody who's associate member, let's check what they should stay on.
I'll just identify that in your bylaws, you have the ability to appoint the associate members for a one-year term. You're supposed to do that at your reorganizational meeting, which I don't know that you've really had a reorganizational meeting, recently. I think you could either wait until you have one and decide to appoint people or not reappoint people, or you could have a majority vote of the board to not have them as associate members anymore. Those, I think, are your two options, what you want to do.
So it'd be an action item that we should do. So
Yep.
Can we tee up who that is on that list and bring it to next board meeting, please? Thank you. We had a discussion about when the next board meeting, and because Kip made us do so much work today, I think we can take a month off and then we would meet in 2 months unless we need any contracting items. Other than that, we spent a lot of money today, right, Mary?
Correct, you've approved a lot of money for this project.
So never did we ever think we'd be in this position as a board, but it's been really great. The state's been working with us and it's been fantastic. But so February you have off, take your vacations, and hopefully in March it'll be warmer. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, could I interject a question? This is Tom.
Yes, Tom, you have the floor. Now it's nice and cozy in here. Is it cold where you live?
No, I'm in my office, but yeah, it'd be cold if I was outside walking the dog. But anyway, the question I have is what's the status of the federal government after we met with Senator Hoeven? Do we know any status as to where we sit with our project?
Presently, he's having a little trouble getting the federal government to figure out how they're going to fund stuff this year. We have a lot of projects held up right now. So I think he's trying to get through what they're doing as far as funding the federal government going forward, and anticipate him updating us a little bit on the the project in February. This is where he left it with me last, so.
Okay, thank you.
If you could go to Washington and get some stuff done, I'd really appreciate that. We'll send you as our ambassador. Happy to do that. Bill? No, nothing. So we are adjourned then. Thank you. No other questions, right, Ken? Very good. Thank you.